Imagine it is Friday the 13th.
Oh, setting a spooky stage right off the bat. I like it.
Yeah, exactly. So you're exhausted from a long week. You are dripping with sweat. Your heart rate is redlining at like 160 beats per minute.
Yeah.
And you are playing in a highly contentious local basketball league.
Right, just a casual Friday night.
Just a casual Friday. But suddenly, right in the middle of a play, you take a violent, intentional elbow directly to the throat.
Ugh, brutal.
Right. You are the victim of a blatant physical assault. But here's the kicker. On Monday morning, when the league issues its official disciplinary memo to all the teams, you are the one receiving a final zero-tolerance warning.
Yeah, that is a wild twist.
It's crazy. Today, we are unpacking a single, hyper-intense document to understand exactly how a situation like that unfolds. Welcome to today's deep dive. I'm so glad you were here with us.
It is a phenomenal text to explore. I mean, we are looking at the official commissioner's office release from an independent basketball organization called B.A.L.L. Premier.
Yeah, B.A.L.L. Premier.
Specifically, this is the memo regarding Week 3 disciplinary actions and a message on sportsmanship from their second season. And while it is just one solitary document, the amount of human psychology baked into these few pages is staggering.
It really is. And, you might be listening to this on your commute or like while walking the dog and thinking that the internal politics of a recreational basketball league have absolutely nothing to do with your life.
Right. Why should I care about this local league? Right.
Exactly. But this memo is a masterclass in conflict resolution. It is a real-time, high-stakes study in setting boundaries, asserting authority, and attempting to manage, well, volatile human emotion.
Absolutely. Because the dynamics at play on this basketball court on a Friday night are the exact same dynamics at play in a tense corporate boardroom or a fractured neighborhood association.
Or a deeply stressful family holiday dinner.
Oh, 100%. It is about how a governing body like a CEO, a manager, a parent, or a sports commissioner attempts to maintain order and fairness when the competitive drive of the people involved starts burning out of control.
Yeah, that central tension is fascinating. The collision between primitive human instinct and sterile bureaucratic governance.
Exactly. A sports league, at its core, is just a highly structured framework designed to safely contain simulated warfare.
Simulated warfare, right? I like that.
But when the containment walls breach and the simulated warfare becomes actual physical hostility, the governing body has to step in and forcefully rebuild reality. That is what this memo is attempting to do.
And the memo wastes absolutely no time getting to the inciting incident. We are in week 3 of season 2. The date is Friday, March 13th.
Friday the 13th.
Yep. And we have a game between two teams with incredibly lighthearted names. It's BBQ Chicken versus Beats by Buffaloes.
Which the naming convention is crucial context here.
It really is.
It tells us the foundational ethos of the league. These are not professional gladiators on multi-million-dollar contracts, right?
No, not at all.
These are individuals who organized themselves, chose intentionally humanist recreational names, and committed their Friday nights to a shared hobby. So the contrast between a team named BBQ Chicken and the extreme violence described in the very first paragraph of the memo, it creates a deeply jarring whiplash.
It's hilarious and terrifying at the same time. The commissioner's office starts by announcing an immediate suspension for a player named Chase Carstensen.
Right. Jersey number 31?
Yeah, jersey 31 for BBQ Chicken. The reason for the immediate removal from the league, I'll quote the memo directly, for elbowing in the neck and face area of DJ Ortega.
DJ Ortega being jersey number 26 for Beats by Buffaloes.
Exactly. Now, notice the deliberate clinical phrasing used by the commissioner's office.
That was fascinating. Elbowing in the neck and face area.
Yeah.
The memo then immediately follows up by stating, quote, "This type of contact is a serious violation of league rules and will not be tolerated."
It reads like a police blotter. There is zero editorializing about Chase's state of mind.
None. And that is the exact purpose of institutional language in the aftermath of a crisis.
Right.
The league removes all subjectivity to establish an undeniable objective boundary. In the biomechanics of any contact sport, there is a vast gray area of accepted incidental contact.
Sure, shoulders clash, hips bump, hands swipe. That's just basketball.
Exactly. But the neck and face represent a universal cross-cultural red line. The head is the seat of consciousness,
Right. It is the most vulnerable point of the human anatomy.
Yeah. So when a player targets the head or neck, the action instantly ceases to be a foul within the context of the game and crosses the threshold into assault.
And once you cross that physical threshold, your intent no longer matters.
Nope.
The league isn't saying Chase acted maliciously, even though he almost certainly lost his temper. They are simply stating the physical coordinates of the strike. An elbow entered the facial airspace. Therefore, the suspension is automatic.
Right, and by relying entirely on those biomechanical facts, the commissioner's office strips Chase Carstensen of any potential defense.
He can't say, oh, I was just playing hard.
Or that he was provoked, or that the contact was accidental. None of that matters. The geography of the contact dictates the punishment.
Wow.
It is a swift, binary execution of authority designed to reassure the rest of the league that the absolute most basic social contract, which is physical safety, is still being enforced.
But the memo does not stop with Chase Carstensen.
No, it doesn't.
If it did, this would just be a straightforward story about one player who completely lost his composure.
Yeah.
But the very next disciplinary action in the text is directed at DJ Ortega,
The victim.
the guy who just got an elbow to the throat.
Yeah, it's wild.
The memo states that DJ Ortega is issued a final warning for a completely separate altercation that occurred during the exact same game.
Right.
And this secondary incident involves a different player from BBQ Chicken, a guy named Zern Temblick, jersey number 0.
And to complete this chaotic triangle, the memo then issues its third disciplinary decree. Zern Temblick is assessed a technical foul and issued a formal warning for his involvement in this secondary incident with DJ Ortega.
Right, with a strict directive that he must conduct himself within the standards of the league moving forward.
So we have a web of retaliation here.
Yeah, a massive web. A player throws an elbow to the head and is suspended. The victim of that elbow then engages in a separate altercation with a completely different player on the offending team,
Right.
resulting in a severe final warning for the victim and a technical foul for the new participant.
And the text forces us to engage in some deductive reasoning here because the league does not provide a chronological timestamp for these events.
Oh, it's true. We have no idea what happened first.
Right. We do not know if the secondary altercation between Ortega and Temblick escalated the ambient tension of the game until Carstensen finally snapped and threw the elbow.
Or if the elbow happened first, causing the social contract to rupture.
Exactly, which then led Ortega to lash out at Temblick in retaliation. But honestly, the chronological order is actually irrelevant to the league's overarching strategy here.
Wait, really? Why is it irrelevant?
Because what the commissioner's office is doing is ruthlessly dismantling the he started it defense.
Oh, wow. They are punishing the entire ecosystem of the conflict.
Precisely. I mean, think about the most deeply ingrained psychological defense mechanism we have from childhood.
Like when siblings fight.
Yeah, when two siblings are caught fighting, the one who retaliated will invariably point to the initial offense to justify their behavior.
He hit me first, so I had the right to hit back.
Exactly. It is the fundamental premise of vigilante justice. And the league is drawing a definitive line in the sand to crush that mindset.
Right. They punish the most egregious violence, the elbow to the face, with an immediate suspension.
But they explicitly refuse to absolve the victim, DJ Ortega, for his subsequent or prior actions.
Because being the victim of a severe foul does not grant you diplomatic immunity for the rest of the game.
It absolutely does not. By penalizing both the instigator of the primary violence and the participants of the secondary altercations, the league is establishing a perimeter around the concept of retaliation.
They are stating unequivocally that a grievance on the court, even a highly legitimate physical grievance, must be outsourced to the governing body.
Yes. You cannot balance the scales yourself. If you attempt to balance the scales yourself, you will be penalized right alongside the person who wronged you.
But look at the specific language of DJ Ortega's punishment, though. The memo says he has issued a final warning, and it is incredibly severe.
Let me guess. 0 tolerance.
Totally. It reads, quote, Ortega is hereby on notice that any further incident of this nature will result in an automatic suspension. There will be no additional warnings.
Wow.
So my question is, does placing that specific mandate on him actually make the problem worse?
How so?
Well, put yourself in his shoes. You were playing a contact sport. You were just physically assaulted on the court. And now the league is publicly broadcasting to every other team that if you were involved in one more incident, you are automatically suspended.
Ah, I see where you're going with this.
Right. If I'm playing against DJ Ortega next Friday, and I know he has 0 margin for error, my immediate strategy would be to quietly provoke him.
Oh, of course.
I would bump him off the ball. I would whisper in his ear. I would do everything in my power to bait him into a reaction, knowing that the slightest outburst will result in his ejection. By giving him a public final warning, hasn't the league just painted a massive target on his back?
That is a brilliant observation regarding the unintended consequences of transparency. You are identifying the inherent vulnerability of operating under a zero-tolerance mandate in a high-friction environment.
Opposing players absolutely will attempt to exploit that psychological handicap.
They will. But this reveals the cold calculus of institutional triage. The commissioner's office is prioritizing the survival and stability of the entire league over the individual emotional closure of DJ Ortega.
Right. They think of the big picture.
Exactly. From the administrative perspective, DJ Ortega is currently a live wire. He has experienced extreme physical provocation, and he has demonstrated a willingness to engage in secondary escalating altercations. He's a high-risk asset.
So the warning isn't just a punishment. It is a behavioral straitjacket designed to protect the rest of the league from him.
Yes, that's a great way to put it. The league recognizes that the trauma of the elbow, combined with whatever history exists between these two teams in Season 2, makes Ortega highly combustible.
Right.
The final warning is a blunt instrument used to sever his capacity for future retaliation. Is it entirely fair to him as an individual who suffered a severe foul?
From a purely empathetic standpoint, probably not.
No, but a sports commissioner is not a therapist, and a disciplinary memo is not an instrument of cosmic justice.
That's a good point.
It is a utilitarian tool designed to keep a localized basketball game from devolving into a weekly, localized riot.
They are forcefully telling Zern Temblick to realign with the standards of the league, and they are stripping DJ Ortega of his ability to participate in any further vigilantism.
Exactly. But treating the symptoms like the elbows, the shouting matches, the technical fouls, that only goes so far.
Right, because the commissioner's office clearly realized they had a massive systemic trust issue on their hands. Players were lashing out and taking the law into their own hands because they felt unseen by the system designed to protect them.
Right.
So after laying down the law on the players, the memo shifts its focus entirely. It moves away from player conduct and directly addresses the core friction threatening to tear the league apart.
The officiating.
Yes, the referees.
And the transition in the text is fascinating. It pivots from authoritarian discipline to a sudden strategic display of empathy.
Oh.
The commissioner's office openly acknowledges the ambient temperature of the gym. They explicitly state, quote, "We understand that Season 2 has been extremely competitive."
They validate the players' emotional investment before deploying their defense of the league's infrastructure.
Exactly.
I want to look at the exact wording they use regarding the referees, because the phrasing reveals an incredible psychological tactic. The memo states, quote, "Even when it may appear that certain calls are being missed on the floor, that does not mean the commissioner's office is unaware. Every game is reviewed. Every incident that is reported or observed is carefully assessed."
This is an invocation of institutional omniscience.
Whoa, institutional omniscience. I like the sound of that.
Yeah, the league is directly confronting the fundamental, inescapable flaw of sports. And that flaw is that referees are fallible human beings.
Right.
In a chaotic, fast-paced environment where 10 large bodies are moving at high speeds in a confined space, a referee will inevitably miss a foul.
It's just statistically guaranteed to happen.
And when a player is struck and the whistle does not blow, the player experiences a profound, acute sense of isolation and injustice in real time.
Because in that exact fraction of a second, the universe has failed them. The rules that govern their safety and fairness have evaporated.
Exactly. That split second of perceived systemic failure is the catalyst that transforms competitive drive into hostile aggression. The player feels unprotected, which triggers the evolutionary response to protect themselves.
So how does a governing body restore faith in a system that relies on flawed human observation?
By assuring the participants that the system possesses a secondary, infallible layer of vision.
Every game is reviewed.
Right. They are telling the players that the flawed human referee on the court is merely the first line of defense, but the ultimate authority, the commissioner, sees everything.
It is the architectural concept of the panopticon brought to life in a recreational sports league.
Yes. The parallels to Jeremy Bentham's panopticon are striking and deeply relevant to understanding how this memo attempts to govern behavior.
So, for people who might not know, Bentham was an 18th century philosopher, right?
Yes, and he designed a theoretical prison architecture. The design consisted of a circular building with a central watchtower.
Okay.
The cells were arranged along the outer rim, backlit by windows, so that the guard in the central tower could clearly see the silhouette of every single inmate at all times.
That sounds terrifying.
It is. But the brilliance of the design, and what makes it a cornerstone of sociological theory, is that the guard tower was equipped with blinds.
So the inmates couldn't see in.
Exactly. They never knew at any given moment if the guard was actually looking at them or if the guard was even in the tower at all.
Wow. Because they could never verify if they were being watched. They had to assume they were always being watched.
Precisely. The French philosopher Michel Foucault later expanded on this, noting that the panopticon induces a state of conscious and permanent visibility that assures the automatic functioning of power.
That is wild.
The physical presence of the guard becomes irrelevant. The inmates internalize the surveillance. They become their own guards.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
Yeah.
By stating every game is reviewed, every incident is carefully assessed, the B.A.L.L. Premier Commissioner's Office is constructing a retroactive digital panopticon.
Yes, exactly. They are instructing the players to assume that every single action, every subtle elbow, every whispered threat is being recorded by the camera and will be scrutinized by the commissioner on a laptop on Monday morning.
They want the players to internalize the camera. But let's look at the biological reality of this demand.
Okay, let's look at it.
Let's really analyze what the league is asking these players to do. It is late on a Friday night. A player is sprinting up and down a hardwood floor. Their body is flooded with cortisol.
Adrenaline is pumping.
Yes, their adrenal glands are pumping adrenaline into their bloodstream. Their heart rate is wildly elevated. The score is tied in a critical Season 2 rivalry game. Someone aggressively hacks them across the arm. The referee misses the call, and the opposing team immediately capitalizes on the mistake and scores.
The perfect storm.
Right. The league is demanding that this highly competitive athlete, surging with the neurochemistry of fight or flight, suppress their immediate, visceral demand for justice, simply because Commissioner Francis Santiago is going to review the video footage 3 days later.
Which is, biologically speaking, almost impossible. You are describing the fundamental conflict between the limbic system and the prefrontal cortex.
Right, the limbic system being the lizard brain.
Exactly. The limbic system, particularly the amygdala, handles our immediate emotional responses, our threat detection, and our survival instincts. It operates at lightning speed.
And the prefrontal cortex?
The prefrontal cortex is the evolutionary newer part of the brain. It's responsible for complex cognitive behavior, long-term planning, and moderating social behavior, and it operates much, much more slowly.
So in the heat of that game, the player's brain has been entirely hijacked by the amygdala.
Right.
The prefrontal cortex is effectively offline.
It is profoundly compromised by the physiological state of the body. So the league is issuing a written directive aimed squarely at the logical long-term planning capabilities of the prefrontal cortex.
Please remain calm. We will review the tape later.
Right. But they are asking the prefrontal cortex to exert absolute control over a limbic system that is currently registering a physical threat. It is a biological paradox.
Wow.
The player wants immediate, tangible vindication on the court. The league can only offer delayed, sterile, administrative evaluation days after the adrenaline has metabolized.
The league is asking the players to effectively pause their evolutionary wiring. Like, do not react to the threat. Defer your anger to an administrative process.
It is an immense psychological ask, and the commissioner's office inherently understands how difficult this is.
They have to.
They do. They recognize that asking a player to silently absorb a perceived injustice and wait for a retroactive review creates an enormous reservoir of unspent toxic energy.
Right, because if a player is prohibited from taking justice into their own hands, and the referee's whistle provides no immediate relief, all of that frustration has to be channeled somewhere.
The pressure cooker has to have a release valve. Otherwise, the entire system explodes, which, as we saw with Carstensen and Ortega, is exactly what had been happening.
Right, and if they can't act out physically on the court, that energy transforms into verbal back-channeling.
Which brings us to the league's mandate for direct communication and their attempt to completely dismantle the whisper network.
Oh, this part is so interesting. The instructions in this section of the memo are highly specific, and whenever a governing body gets highly specific about a prohibition, it reveals the exact nature of the pathology they are trying to cure.
Absolutely.
The text dictates that if any player or team has concerns, which is guaranteed given the intensity we've just discussed, those concerns must be directed straight to Commissioner Francis Santiago. But the fascinating part is the explicit ban that follows. The memo reads, quote, "Please avoid relaying messages through third parties, talking to other players, or having someone else voice your concerns on your behalf."
They are attempting to outlaw gossip.
Yeah.
By explicitly banning third parties and having someone else voice your concerns, the commissioner is confirming that a toxic whisper network has deeply infected the culture of B.A.L.L. Premier.
It suggests a culture heavily reliant on back-channeling and proxy arguments.
It is the adult equivalent of the game of telephone, but weaponized.
Oh, I love that description.
Right. Player A feels he was fouled maliciously and the referee ignored it. Instead of processing that event objectively, player A goes to the sidelines and complains to player B from a different team.
And then player B relays that complaint to his team captain, player C.
Exactly. By the time the grievance filters its way through the gym and eventually reaches the ears of the commissioner, the narrative has fundamentally mutated.
It has gone from the referee missed a blocking foul to the referees have a systemic bias
Yeah.
and are actively rigging the season against us.
Yes. And we have to examine how whisper networks actually function on a neurological level, specifically regarding memory reconsolidation.
Okay, lay it on me.
When a person experiences an emotionally charged event, the memory is initially formed. But human memory is not a static video recording.
Right, it's not a hard drive.
Exactly. Every time you recall and retell a story, the memory is pulled out of storage, becomes malleable, and is then reconsolidated or rewritten back into the brain.
Wait, so it changes every time you access it?
It changes every single time. Now, imagine a player who feels wronged. When they take that grievance to a sympathetic third party, like a teammate or a friend on another team, they are highly likely to exaggerate the severity of the injustice to garner maximum sympathy.
Right, because they want the other person to be mad with them.
Exactly. The sympathetic listener validates their outrage. During this retelling, the player's brain reconsolidates the memory of the event, incorporating the newly exaggerated details and the validated emotional heat.
The memory physically changes to match the narrative.
Yes. Over the course of a few days of venting to third parties, the player genuinely believes a highly distorted, hyper-villainized version of what actually happened on the court.
So the gossip physically corrupts the evidence? That is wild.
Yes. Gossip acts as an accelerant for resentment, and it destroys systemic trust faster than any single blown call by a referee.
Wow.
The commissioner's office realizes that if they allow the players to litigate their grievances in the parking lot or in group chats, the league will fracture into paranoid, hostile factions.
So by forcing all communication to flow through one single uncorrupted channel direct to Commissioner Francis Sandiego, the league is attempting to freeze the narrative before it can mutate.
Yes, exactly. Think about the parallel to a corporate HR department.
Okay, yeah.
If you have a severe issue with a coworker, say they consistently undermine you in client meetings, if you bypass management and simply complain about this coworker at the water cooler with 3 other colleagues, the problem does not get solved.
It metastasizes.
Exactly. You create factions. You breed a toxic ambient culture. And inevitably, the coworker hears a distorted, hyper-aggressive version of your complaint through the grapevine, making them deeply defensive and prone to retaliation.
The only functional mechanism for resolution is to formalize the grievance and take it directly to human resources or management.
And the memo explicitly champions this logic, stating, quote, "Direct communication ensures that every issue is heard accurately and addressed appropriately."
They're demanding an uncorrupted chain of custody for all complaints.
Yes, but there is a secondary, unstated psychological mechanism at play here, too.
Really? What is it?
By forcing players to use proper channels and communicate exclusively and directly with the commissioner, the bureaucracy itself acts as an emotional dampener.
Oh, the friction of the process forces you to calm down.
Exactly. If you are furious after the final buzzer on Friday night, the easiest, most limbic-driven response is to immediately yell at an opponent or vent to your captain over a beer.
It requires very little cognitive effort.
Right. But the new rule dictates that you cannot do that. Instead, you must formulate a direct, coherent, formal complaint to the commissioner.
And the sheer act of having to articulate your anger into a structured communication forces the brain to shift processing power away from the emotional amygdala and back into the logical prefrontal cortex.
Exactly. It is the organizational equivalent of writing a blistering, furious email to your boss, saving it in your drafts folder overnight, and waking up the next morning realizing that the emotion has dissipated and you don't actually actually need to send it.
The requirement to formalize the thought often neutralizes the anger.
It is an enforced cooling-off period disguised as administrative protocol.
I see the genius in that, I truly do. But let's look at the sheer logistics of this mandate.
Okay, let's talk logistics.
The league is attempting to solve the whisper network by centralizing all authority and all communication into a single point of failure commissioner, Francis Sandiego.
Right.
We know from the memo that this is an 8-team league. Let's do some basic math on the human element here. Assuming standard roster sizes, you are looking at roughly 80 highly competitive, emotionally invested adult men.
Yeah, that's a lot of egos.
Right. If every single grievance, every perceived missed call, every bruised ego, and every interpersonal conflict has to bypass the team captains and become a direct one-on-one dialogue with the commissioner, how does the system not instantly collapse under its own weight?
That is the million-dollar question.
Does Commissioner Sandiego actually possess the bandwidth to be the sole arbiter of reality for 80 individuals? The league is basically demanding that Francis Sandiego function less as a basketball administrator and more as a full-time, on-call crisis therapist.
You have correctly identified the massive vulnerability in their strategy. Centralizing authority successfully starves the rumor mill, but it places an immense, potentially unsustainable cognitive and emotional burden on the leadership.
Absolutely.
The text makes an incredible demand of the players. It says, quote, "When a decision is made by the commissioner's office, it is made after careful review, and we ask that all parties respect the outcome."
They are demanding blind faith.
They are asking 80 highly competitive individuals to trust in Francis Sandiego's capacity to be perfectly fair, perfectly attentive, endlessly patient, and entirely immune to bias.
But if the commissioner takes too long to respond to an email or issues a ruling that a player fundamentally disagrees with, that bottleneck becomes a choke point.
Oh, immediately.
And the moment a player feels their direct communication was ignored or mishandled, they will immediately revert to the whisper network.
The back-channeling will begin again.
Exactly. But this time, the resentment will be directed not just at the referees or the opposing team, but at the commissioner's office itself.
It is a high-risk gamble, but we must contextualize why the league is willing to take that risk.
Why do you think they are?
They are willing to put that crushing burden on the commissioner's office because the alternative, letting the players self-police and self-regulate their grievances through informal channels, has already failed catastrophically.
Right. The decentralized approach resulted in Friday the 13th.
It resulted in a player taking an elbow to the neck and face area. The centralization of power is a necessary triage to stop the bleeding.
That makes total sense. So all of these mechanisms we have dissected, the swift clinical suspensions, the destruction of the he started it defense, the retroactive panopticon of video review, and the strict centralization of communication.
Right.
These are not just arbitrary rules thrown together in a panic. They are carefully calibrated tools deployed in service of protecting a very specific, deeply held vision for what this league is supposed to be.
Which brings us to the culmination of the memo.
Yes, where the text elevates from a disciplinary document into a philosophical manifesto about the nature of competition itself.
The final section of the memo is titled Sportsmanship Reminder, and the shift in tone is profound. The authoritarian, bureaucratic voice recedes, replaced by an almost inspirational appeal to the community's shared values.
The Commissioner's Office proudly states that B.A.L.L. Premier was built on the fundamental belief that, quote, every team in this league is capable of playing a great brand of basketball.
Yeah.
They go out of their way to praise the talent, the effort, and the competitive spirit exhibited by the players week after week. They are explicitly validating the aggression that makes the sport compelling.
Right, they aren't trying to make it soft.
No, not at all. And then they introduce their official closing motto, which serves as the thesis statement for the entire organization. Play hard, play fair, respect the game.
It is a remarkably delicate tightrope walk. Governing bodies in any highly competitive environment, whether it is a sports league, a high-pressure sales floor, or a political campaign face, a core paradox.
What's the paradox?
They desire the high performance, the drive, the intensity, and the passion that is only generated by fierce competition. They want the players to care deeply.
Right. The memo explicitly encourages this. It says compete with everything you have.
But in the exact same breath, they demand that this intense, primal energy be neatly packaged and completely devoid of the messy human fallout that naturally accompanies it.
They draw a hard existential line. Quote, altercations have no place in this league. That is not who we are.
That is not who we are. It is a powerful assertion of identity. They are trying to separate the internal emotion of competing from the external action of hostility.
To understand why this specific assertion of identity is so critical, we have to look at the structural architecture of the league itself. The memo reminds the players that B.A.L.L. Premier is an 8-team league.
That is the most important piece of demographic data in the entire document.
Because an 8-team league is an incredibly intimate, enclosed ecosystem.
It is entirely different from the sociology of a massive professional league. In a 30-team professional organization, a player might only face a specific opponent once or twice in a calendar year.
The friction is diluted by distance and volume.
But in an 8-team recreational league, you are trapped in a closed loop. You are playing the exact same people constantly. You see the same faces, you guard the same players, you argue with the same referees week after agonizing week.
It accelerates the familiarity, and familiarity breeds contempt.
Exactly.
By the third week of Season 2, everyone on the court intimately knows everyone else's tendencies, their physical weaknesses, and the exact psychological buttons to push to get under their skin. The grudges don't fade, they compound.
Exactly. It engages the evolutionary psychology of small tribes. Anthropologist Robin Dunbar proposed Dunbar's number, which suggests there is a cognitive limit to the number of people with whom one can maintain stable social relationships.
Which is usually estimated around 150, right?
Right. An 8-team league fits perfectly within that small-scale tribal dynamic. In a small tribe, reputation is everything, and conflicts threaten the survival of the entire group because you cannot simply walk away and find a new tribe.
So therefore, the league's final instruction, at the end of the day, shake hands, is not merely a polite request for good manners. It is an existential necessity.
Yes.
Let's frame this with a non-sports equivalent to really highlight the stakes here. An 8-team league functions exactly like a small town with a population of a few hundred people.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Right, because if you live in a massive metropolis like New York City, and you get into a vicious screaming match with a mechanic over a repair bill, the social consequences are minimal.
You can simply drive to a different mechanic in a different borough the next day and never see the first guy again.
Exactly. The city absorbs the friction. But if you live in a tiny rural town, you cannot afford to burn that bridge.
No, you can't.
If you scream at the local mechanic, you are mathematically guaranteed to stand behind him in line at the only grocery store in town on Sunday, and you will probably sit next to him at the PTA meeting on Tuesday.
Right. You have to find a way to coexist despite the friction, or the social fabric of the town completely disintegrates. B.A.L.L. Premier is a small town.
That analogy perfectly captures the structural fragility of the league. If an 8-team closed ecosystem devolves into genuine, sustained hostility, if the BBQ Chicken and Beats by Buffalo's rivalry turns into a weekly brawl, the structure collapses.
Totally. The referees, who are likely just local contractors, will quit because the pay isn't worth the physical risk.
The facility managers will revoke the gym rental permit due to liability.
Players who just want to exercise will drop out.
Exactly. The handshake at the end of the game is the social glue holding the entire fragile enterprise together.
The sportsmanship reminder is a desperate plea from the commissioner, acting as the mayor of this small town, for the citizens to remember their shared baseline reality. We are all here because we love this game. Do not destroy the town.
But the league's central demand still relies on a profound contradiction. They tell these players, compete with everything you have, but do not turn that competitive fire into something negative.
Right.
How do you draw a definitive boundary around something as subjective as fire?
That's the problem.
If I am diving on the hardwood floor for a loose ball, and I crash violently into your knees in the process, am I demonstrating the great competitive spirit the league praises? Or have I turned my fire into something negative?
The physical result is the same. Someone gets hurt.
Exactly. But the intent is entirely invisible. How can any referee on the floor, or even Commissioner San Diego reviewing the high-definition video footage on a Monday, perfectly legislate the internal passion of a human being?
They cannot. It is the ultimate limitation of governance. You cannot legislate intent. You can only legislate outcomes. The commissioner's office is attempting to artificially construct a sterile boundary around a fundamentally wild, primal human emotion. They write the cultural manifesto on a piece of paper, disseminate it via email, and pray that the players will internalize the philosophy when their heart rate hits 160 beats per minute.
It is a paradox that every governing body wrestles with. You want the fire, but you want to control the burn.
That's perfectly said.
Just think about the journey we have taken today through this single isolated document. We started with a violent, visceral moment, an elbow to the face on Friday the 13th.
Yeah, it feels like forever ago now.
It does. And by meticulously analyzing the institutional response to that violence, we have uncovered a massive story about human nature.
We really have.
We saw how the commissioner's office forcefully dismantled the childish instinct of the "he started it" defense by punishing retaliation as severely as instigation.
We explored the fascinating psychological architecture of the panopticon, examining how the league demands players trust a delayed, retroactive video review rather than surrendering to the immediate adrenaline-fueled demands of their limbic system.
Right. We dissected the sociology of the whisper network, revealing how gossip physically corrupts memory.
And how forcing players to articulate their anger through formal, centralized channels acts as a necessary, if burdensome, emotional dampener.
And finally, we saw how all of these disciplinary mechanics are ultimately deployed to protect the fragile, small-town ecosystem of an 8-team league.
Enforcing a culture that desperately tries to balance the thrill of fierce competition with the existential requirement of a post-game handshake.
The document is just a testament to the sheer difficulty of managing human beings. And as we conclude, I want to toss it over to you for a final thought to mull over regarding our own lives, far removed from the basketball court.
Yeah, absolutely. We spent a significant amount of time discussing the commissioner's insistence that retroactive fairness, the promise of a future review, must be enough to satisfy the players.
Right.
But as we establish, human beings are evolutionarily wired for immediate, tangible justice. So think about your own daily interactions.
Okay.
When you feel profoundly wronged in the moment, whether a reckless driver cuts you off on the highway, a colleague blatantly takes credit for your work in a meeting, or you find yourself in a deeply unfair argument with a family member, can you easily engage your prefrontal cortex?
Wow.
Can you truly defer your anger, swallow the perceived injustice, and wait for a future fair review of the situation? Or is the primal instinct to react, to vindicate yourself and balance the scales right then and there, simply too deeply embedded in our biology to ever truly legislate away?
That is the ultimate question. Can you suppress the survival instinct when the whistle doesn't blow? Man, what a thought to end on. I want to thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.
It was a pleasure.
I hope you walk away looking at the mundane rules, the HR memos, and the community guidelines in your own life a little differently. Behind every sterile bureaucratic policy is a messy, passionate, entirely human behavior that someone is desperately trying to understand and control. Keep staying curious and keep seeking out the fascinating stories hidden within the everyday documents around us. We will see you next time.